Hi, I'm Dark Steel, and welcome to our fourth ever installment of Prepper Fridays. This week I'm going to try and get you to ask the hard-hitting questions, like how many sweaters does this guy own, and can he really afford to wear a different one in every week's video? We'll find out. Okay, so let's start the talk with talking about the U.S. government shutdown and its potential impacts. So far, it's gone on for 20 days and has no end in sight. I think fairly assuredly, nothing's going to change. As we get into the topic of the rant today, I'm going to answer the question posed in the title of this video, which is, could this be the big event, the big SHTF catastrophe? My answer would be probably not, and not for the reason you might think. I personally think that we already had the big event, that we are already in post society, and we are watching it slowly fall down on itself, and primarily because of the complacency of the people, that they can be pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and just continue to go, no, everything's fine, everything's okay. And so there's a benefit to that, but inevitably it's going to lead to much worse, because instead of taking action, a lot of people are sitting around waiting for the call to action, and it's already passed. I don't know when it happened. I don't know what the event was. I just know that in the last few years, I can honestly say things have changed so colossally that I do not recognize our society. And I realize that can be said about any era. I realize that, there's a stark difference between the 80s and the 70s and even the 90s, and there's different eras that change happens. But this change isn't fashion. This change is written in blood. This change is marked with violence and chaos, and the fact that you can't enter a room without hearing somebody talking about politics. As much as we try to ignore it, we're all facing the fact that society is broken, and the only way through is over a cliff, and we're all trying to stamp our feet and keep from going over that cliff, but we're being pushed from behind, and there's no stopping it. Okay, so that got a little bleak. But I'll tell you why I can say this with a smile on my face, and it's because we can look back through history and see repeating cycles in politics, in climate, in all kinds of different ways. We see these repeating cycles of our world, always kind of moving forward like the wheels on a machine, just pushing us forward, but always kind of coming back to the same points. What we know from our history is that great catastrophe, great calamity, as damaging as it may be, is almost always a catalyst for new birth. It's always a way for society to advance. And those who make it through this next step, as horrible as it may be, and I might not be one of them, I'm willing to admit that I'm not going to say that I'm going to be one of them. I'm hedging my bets. I'm really hoping those who make it through, those who find their way through the chaos to the other side, get to build a new society in whatever way that means, in whatever way makes sense for them. And this will be just a metamorphosis for society as a whole. And I'm talking global society here. I'm talking, it may start in one place, but at this point, especially with globalization, the dominoes are set. We need a solid shift, and everything changes around the world. Okay, so our first stop here is going to be the New York Times website, where I have found an article. See how the effects of the government shutdown are piling up. Today is January 10th, which, yes, it is. I'm recording this on Thursday, so this is off by one day. But we all know nothing's going to change overnight, so we'll just continue as going. Let's go into that. Why do I say nothing's going to change? Why do I say, yeah. Why do I say nothing's going to change overnight? Okay, let's focus on how Americans react to things. Let's talk about the American stance on giving in and conceding. Okay, I'm trying to think of the right way to word this. Americans have an idea, a concept of strength through winning. It's what's pushed our country so far. It's what continues to propel us, kinda. But it's a great downfall, because unwillingness to lose, the lack of ability to concede, is where we are right now. Think to yourself, if you've ever been in a confrontation on the internet, if you've ever been talking to another person who disagrees with your point of view, how often have you ever made an argument that made that other person go, you're right. I'm sorry, I was a dick. I realize it happens. I've seen it happen. But I'm saying, what is the percentage that happens? It's not very often. And if it is, then congratulations, you have an excellent list of online friends. My point being that it is a challenge just saying, you're right. Just stepping back for a moment and conceding to another person's point. Not even admitting that the other person's right. Let's step away from that. Disagreeing with a person, but letting them win so that the battle ends. Now, here's the tough part. Which one should be let to win? I am right in the middle of it. Because on one side, I think that the president is staying absolutely with what he said he would do, and whether or not I agree with what he said he would do, I'm not even going to state here, but I appreciate somebody standing their ground and doing what they said they would do. However, on the other side of things, the Democrats are doing the exact same thing. And the funniest part of all of this, and it's not even, it's so funny because it's divided like we're gearing up for a civil war here. It's going to be Democrats versus Republicans instead of just Americans with different viewpoints. It's funny that we've got both sides doing the same thing and making fun of each other for doing what they themselves are doing. I don't even know which side I'd stand behind. I'm not standing behind either because I'm hedging my bets and watching what's happening, and my voice is not going to make a difference in the outcome of this. I need to focus on how I'm going to move on past what's happening next. So let's look into this. See how the effects of the government shutdown are piling up. Today is January 10th, the 20th day of the partial government shutdown. The shutdown is affecting about 800,000 federal employees and some services for the public. The longer it lasts, the more effects are felt. If the shutdown does not end tomorrow, thousands of federal workers will miss their paychecks. What has happened since the shutdown? December 22nd, partial government shutdown begins. December 26th, Federal Emergency Management Agency issues a stop work order to all contractors. The Department of Agriculture closes its Farm Service Agency county offices on December 28th. December 29th. Oh, hold on. This is still December 28th. The Environmental Protection Agency runs out of funds and furloughs about 95% of its employees. December 29th. The Food and Drug Administration stops its routine inspections. December 30th. The National Park Services suspend services. I guess January 1st. National Science Foundation suspends reviews of grant proposals. The Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau halts approvals for new beer labels. January 2nd, the Smithsonian Museum and National Zoo close their doors. January 3rd, National Gallery of Art closes to the public. The Federal Communications Commission suspends most operations. January 4th, Department of Housing and Urban Developments sends letters to 1,500 landlords asking them to evict residents. Hundreds of Transportation Security Administration workers at multiple airports start calling in sick rather than working without pay. Department of Agriculture delays the release of several major domestic and world crop reports. The Interior Department stops accepting new Freedom of Information Act requests. January 7th, the White House directs the Internal Revenue Service to issue tax refunds during the shutdown. January 8th, the Agricultural Department said that the benefits under this Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps, would be fully provided for the month of February. Nice. What will happen if the shutdown continues? And this is the important part. January 11th, many federal workers miss a paycheck. Okay. January 12th, the shutdown breaks the record for the longest government shutdown in history. January 15th, members of the Coast Guard, which is funded through the Department of Homeland Security, miss their paychecks. January 18th, federal district courts run out of funds. Civil cases may be suspended or postponed, but criminal cases and other essential work will proceed. Okay. January 25th, federal workers miss another paycheck. Many agencies with federal government are operating normally during the shutdown because they were funded through this fiscal year, which ends in September. But if lawmakers and the White House fail to reach a budget agreement for months or even years, as the president has suggested, that funding would start to run out too. Some economists are already predicting that a shutdown lasting longer than February would harm the broader economy. So that is as reported by NewYorkTimes.com. I will put the link to this in the description of my video. So it might seem a little bit weird that I brought us over to the French Revolution on Wikipedia, but I'm a fond believer that to tell the future, you simply need to revisit the past. So let's take a look at history. Historians have pointed to many events and factors that led to the revolution. Rising social and economic inequality, new political ideas emerging from the Enlightenment, economic management, environmental factors leading to agricultural failure, unmanageable national debt, and a political mismanagement on the part of Louis XVI have all been cited as laying the groundwork for the revolution. Okay, so the reason why I brought this part up, and again, I'm going to put the link down in the description so you can read the whole thing. It's a very interesting look into history and everything. But this part right here is important to me because we're starting to see a few things here, and that's why I brought up government shutdown as well as climate change, is because I felt like those two things actually are factors in the whole picture. We need to look at this holistically. We need to look at this through the view of that everything that's going on right now matters, because all of it piles on top of each other to create the environment that we're in. We can't look at one factor or another or another. I know that a lot of preppers have this idea that they've got their own idea of what they should be prepping for and all of that. Don't do that. I mean, you should definitely have your own plan, your own strategy, but you need to look at everything as a possibility. Don't specifically go, okay, well, if a meteor hits the Earth, this is how to prepare for that, and that's what I'm banking on. Because you should be thinking about all of it, all of the above. And just on a side note, I have no idea what to do if a like extinction level meteor hits the Earth. I head between my legs and kiss my ass goodbye is my plan on that one. Anyway, moving on from there, we're looking at environmental factors, which, like I said, leading to agricultural failure. I don't see as much of that, because if anything, where I'm sitting, agriculture is getting a little bit easier, because we are not seeing as much frost time. we're having a longer growth season, and so that's actually helping. People have more food now, and I mean people all around the world have more food available to them than has ever been available. The nutritional value and everything is on the decline. But moving on. I'm going to have to edit a lot of this down to a cohesive rant because today I'm just rambling and rambling. Next, we're going to bring you over to the influence of the French Revolution, because you might be thinking, okay, the French Revolution happened and it was this big bloody thing and it changed France forever. What does that have to do with anything else? Well, this was a time when it took a while for news to travel. This is a time when globalization hadn't really happened, when people weren't talking as easily to each other as we are now with the internet, with TV, with telephone. We have the ability to instantly contact people all over the world. We're all in each other's business, and I'm willing to wager that somebody watching this video right now is not watching it from within the confines of the United States. So yeah, we're talking to each other in a number of ways that pushes things forward. But even at this time, when it was a little bit harder to get word quickly, the French Revolution had a major impact on Europe and in the New World. Historians widely regard the Revolution as one of the most important events in human history. In the short term, France lost thousands of countrymen in the form of immigrants who wished to escape political tensions and save their lives. A number of individuals settled in the neighboring countries, chiefly Britain, Germany, Austria, and Prussia. However, quite a few also went to the United States. The displacement of these Frenchmen led to the spread of French culture, policies regulating immigration, and a safe haven for royalists and other counter-revolutionaries to outlast the violence of the French Revolution. The long-term impact on the French was profound, shaping politics, society, religion, and ideas, and polarizing politics for more than a century. The closer the other countries were, the greater and deeper was the French impact, bringing liberalism and the end of many feudal or traditional laws and practices. However, there was also a conservative counter-reaction that defeated Napoleon, reinstalled the Bourbon king, and in some ways reversed the new reforms. Okay, so the reason why this is important is because, like I said, this was a time when you would expect one country's events to have little effect on the rest of the world, and it changed a broad part of the world. It changed a lot of the world because of the act of one country. Now, a government official from another country can hardly sneeze without it being blasted all over the internet, without it being spoken about in rumor, in your own living room. It's spread through the news. It's spread through the internet. It's spread through telephonic communication. It's spread through so many different forms. It's being spread right now, I'm sure. But a major change in one country's politics sends ripples around the world. And there are few countries greater in influence than the United States. And I mean, I'm not trying to say that I'm not saying that we're all great and powerful. I'm not saying that we're better. I'm just saying that the influence that the United States has on other countries around the world is profound. So what happens when we can no longer manage our shit, when we can no longer handle our own business? It starts to send out that ripple effect in very meaningful, very lasting ways to other countries around the world. Now, I'm coming back over here to discuss briefly the subject of climate change, because I'm actually a little bit disappointed, but I went looking for unbiased data. I wanted to know what the actual research says on the subject of climate change, so I could refer to it as I'm giving my spiel. And what I found online was one argument after another, some people saying this guy's stupid, some people saying that guy's stupid, everybody arguing what data is real, what data is false, and all taking opposite sides on it. And I didn't want to partake in that. I didn't want to give my audience anybody's biased views. I didn't want to give anybody's rant about the rights or wrongs of it. I just wanted the information so that I could hand it to you guys and we could have a discussion. Having that said, since I couldn't find it, if you do find something along those lines, I would love a link. Just go ahead and post it down below. And I'm going to share real quick what I do not expect to be your solid opinion on things. I'm just sharing what I believe and what I know to be true, starting the conversation. I believe that climate change is real. I believe that if you don't believe that climate change is real, you haven't been outside in a while. I do not believe that we are the number one cause of it. I don't believe that we are the major cause of it anyway. I believe that we are part of it as we're part of this earth. We're part of what's going on in the environment. And I do believe that we could do better. And I do believe that we should recycle and stop driving gas-guzzling cars and stop doing things that we know are wrong. However, I also believe that this shit was going to happen regardless. I also believe that if you look back at a timeline through history, you can see this cooling, then warming, then cooling, then warming, this climate change. There are old maps that I've seen referred to, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong here, but do it in a polite way. But I've seen old maps where portions of Antarctica are drawn in, and it's drawn as unfrozen landmass, and there's some record of Greenland not always being covered in ice is why they called it Greenland, and vice versa with Iceland. I believe that shit changes, and I have a personal reason to believe that. I've got a picture in my library of some family from a while back. I can't remember right now who all is in the picture, but generations before me, dragging a sled through what looks like 2 feet of snow in Arkansas. I know that as a child there was snow in Arkansas. I know that now my kids gear up for snow while when it starts snowing, and they can play in slush puddles, but we don't get real strong storms very often anymore, and winter seems to be getting shorter and shorter. I kind of project that by the time this cycle, you know, caps off, whatever, if it does that, that we're going to be in a far warmer climate right here in Arkansas, and that we're going to take on more, that we're going to see more of a kind of rainforest climate. And that's my hopeful projection, because that'd be great agriculturally. But there are some downsides that come with that, obviously. But I'm watching the weather, and I mean, I started taking note of it a few years ago, and I've been keeping track of it. And the weather here is so rapidly changing that if I were to say I don't believe that the climate's changing, that'd be absolutely asinine. However, I realize that most of the people, the skeptics of climate change, aren't actually skeptics of the fact that the climate is changing, but skeptics of the cause and effect relationship. And I also am stating right now that I will be absolutely open-minded to any data that I'm given that makes sense. And anyway, I want to hear from both sides of this argument, and the only... Actually, I want to take that word back. Not an argument. Not an argument at all. I will not tolerate an argument. I will delete and block comments that are argumentative. Let's have a conversation. Let's enlighten each other. Let's bring something to the table in an open way and listen to each other openly. We should all be working together, not against each other. This is not a competition for our survival. We need to work together with teamwork. And I believe that if we take ourselves out of the emotional part of these subjects and just put ourselves into thinking about solutions, thinking about the step forward, thinking about the cause and effect relationships between all of these things, we can have an open discussion with people who vastly disagree with us. And it doesn't have to turn into internet trolling. It doesn't have to turn into a battle for who's right. We can just talk. And if nothing gets solved on my channel, whatever. It's a small YouTube channel. Let go. Anyway, that's my entire rant for the day. I hope you enjoyed. What do I have in common with this inanimate object? It too has no sense of diffidence. Speaking of shameless plugs, be sure and check out my other YouTube channel, Dark Steel Knives. You can also find me on Patreon. Plus, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and DeviantArt. Oh, but I'm not done yet. You can also find me on rowanwoodart.com, where you can find some of my art for sale, as well as much, much more. Okay, I'm done.